I moved into this rental room one late afternoon after many exhausting days searching for accommodation. As a student from the countryside, I didn't have many choices. The rent was cheap and the location was near my school, so I decided to sign the lease immediately, even though the room felt somewhat cold. The landlord, a middle-aged woman, seemed rushed as she handed me the key. She only gave brief instructions. Don't make too much noise here and always keep the door locked at night. I found it odd, but figured she just wanted to avoid trouble. The rental room was at the end of the hallway, a small space with discolored walls and an old mirror hanging on an aging cabinet. The smell of mildew, mixed with the scent of old plaster, hit me as soon as I entered, but I thought, just clean it up and it'll be fine. The first few days passed peacefully. I was busy with my classes and part-time job, and at night, I'd just eat quickly and go to bed. However, strange things began to happen gradually. At first, there were footsteps in the hallway late at night. I thought it was just someone else in the building moving around. But when I asked, I found out I was the only tenant left in the entire building. On another night, I was studying when I heard a knock at the door. Knock, knock, knock. The knocking was steady but very light, as if deliberately trying not to draw too much attention. When I opened the door, there was nothing, only darkness and a cold gust of wind passing through. A chill ran down my spine, but I reassured myself that I was just overworked and imagining things. Things got worse after that. One time, I woke up in the middle of the night with the distinct feeling that someone was standing next to my bed. I didn't dare open my eyes and just lay still, listening to my own breathing mix with faint noises coming from the corner of the room. The next morning, I discovered a scribbled message on the mirror. Don't stay. I started paying more attention to the room. On the wall, there was a large dark stain that resembled water damage, but when I touched it, it was dry and cold. Every time I looked at it, I felt as though someone was watching me from behind. Unable to endure it any longer, I decided to confront the landlord. At first, she avoided the subject and kept saying, if you can't stay, then just move out. But when I shared my experiences, she froze. After a long silence, she finally said, there was a girl who rented that room before you. She was quiet and didn't interact much with others. One day, people found that she had taken her own life in that room. I heard she wrote something on the wall before she died, but I painted over it. Tenants after her all complained about strange things and eventually left. She added that the neighbors often heard crying from the room at midnight, even when no one was living there. I decided to leave, but on my last night, I had a strange dream. In the dream, I saw a young woman standing in the corner of the room. She wore a white dress, her long hair falling over half her face. She didn't speak, but raised her hand to point at the wall with the dark stain. I woke up drenched in sweat. For some reason, I felt I had to uncover the truth. Grabbing a small knife, I started scraping at the plaster over the stain. After some effort, I uncovered a small hollow space inside the wall. Inside was an old notebook, its cover decayed with age. Opening it, I found messy handwriting detailing the girl's life filled with pain, being betrayed by her lover, losing her job, and having no family to turn to. On the last page, she wrote, I don't want to die, but I have no other way. If anyone finds this, please help me find peace. I took the notebook to a nearby temple and asked a monk to perform a ritual to help her spirit move on. During the ceremony, I felt as if someone was standing next to me, but the presence no longer felt heavy or oppressive. After the ritual, I returned to the room one last time to collect my belongings. There were no more footsteps, no knocks at the door, and no sensation of being watched. The room was completely silent, but I knew I never wanted to return. This story, to me, was not just a horrifying experience, but also a reminder of the silent pain that others might endure. I left, but every time I recall it, I still feel a chill down my spine. I'm a student from a small town, newly arrived in the city just a few months ago. Tight on money, I had to find a cheaper place to live. On a friend's recommendation, I came across an old boarding house, tucked away in a narrow alley. From the outside, it looked rather run down, but the low rent and convenient location made me decide to give it a try. My room was number 305, located on the 3rd floor. The landlady was an elderly woman, small and frail, with a raspy voice. After hurriedly handing me the key and a few brief instructions, I made my way upstairs. The wooden staircase creaked with every step, and the dim light from the hallway bulb added to the eerie atmosphere. The room was modest, with just enough space for a bed, a study desk, and an old wardrobe. It wasn't much, but for me, it was good enough. At first, I adjusted to life here. However, the third floor always gave me an odd feeling. The hallway was unnervingly silent, and the doors to the other rooms remained firmly shut. There were no sounds of people, no footsteps. Every time I passed through, I felt as though the doors were watching me. One night, as I was studying, I heard footsteps outside. The heavy dragging sound moved slowly down the hallway. The steps stopped right outside my door, but there was no knock. I froze, my heart pounding. Gathering all my courage, I opened the door, but the hallway was empty. The light at the far end flickered ominously. The next day, I noticed something even stranger. Items in my room had been moved. A book I left on the desk was now on the floor, and the chair had been pulled away from the desk. I didn't remember doing any of that. At first, I dismissed it as exhaustion playing tricks on me, but a growing sense of unease settled in. The following night, while slumped over my desk from fatigue, I heard laughter echoing from the end of the hallway. At first, it was a faint giggle, but it gradually grew louder, sharper, like a child's laughter, reverberating through the wooden door, seeping directly into my ears and sending chills down my spine. I tiptoed to the door, my trembling hand reaching for the doorknob. When I cracked the door open, the hallway beyond was pitch black, with only the weak light from the farthest bulb casting a faint glow. But I saw it. A figure stood still at the far end, its back turned to me. Its form was blurry, as if wrapped in a thin veil of mist, making it impossible to discern clearly. Slowly it began to move, each motion deliberate and heavy, as though it struggled to turn toward me. I held my breath, my heartbeat thundered in my ears, and then it turned. It had no face. There was only a black void, deep, gaping, and horrifyingly empty. No eyes, no nose, no mouth, just an overwhelming emptiness. I stood paralyzed, my legs frozen as if rooted to the ground. Suddenly, the light at the end of the hall began flickering violently, and with each flash, the figure crept closer, inch by inch, slowly, methodically, as though it was toying with my terror. I couldn't take it anymore. The door slammed shut as I threw my weight against it. My ragged breathing echoed in the tiny room. Outside, the laughter came again, this time right next to me, whispering into my ear. I pressed myself against the wall, my eyes fixed on the door. I didn't sleep that night. In those long, unbearable hours, a strange thought came to me. Had I ever seen anyone on the third floor? I racked my memory but couldn't recall a single face other than the landlady's. The next morning, while packing my belongings to leave, I found a crumpled note tucked under my pillow. The handwriting was shaky and uneven. "Don't let them see you." As I descended to the second floor, I encountered a middle-aged man. When I mentioned the third floor, he gave me a strange look. He told me, with a tone of disbelief, that the building only had 2 floors. His words left me stunned. I stepped outside and looked up. The third floor was gone. Where it should have been was now a moss-covered, dilapidated roof. I shuddered as I realized the key to room 305 was still in my hand, cold to the touch. Memories of the laughter, the faceless figure, and the note under my pillow swirled in my mind. I didn't dare look back. Later, I heard that the boarding house had once been engulfed in a massive fire. The third floor was completely destroyed, and no one who lived there survived. But why was I living on the third floor? And who had left me that note? The answers to these questions remain a mystery I'll never solve.